Top 5 realignment hangups for the remaining schools in the Pac-12. I left Arizona out of this because I think that they're about to fix their hang-up. I mean, if you're asking me what I think is going to happen, I think Arizona is going to be making an announcement here soon. I don't know that. I just think it. There's a difference.
Yeah, because whoever, if they come, it's not a surprise. If they don't come, it might be more of a surprise. But anyone after them will be,
Yeah. Right now, it's kind of like Bigfoot. Like, if you believe in Bigfoot, you don't know that there's Bigfoot. You just think that there's Bigfoot. I think that they're coming, but I don't know that. And until there's a dead Sasquatch on my doorstep, I won't know.
I don't know if anyone's bad enough to kill Bigfoot unless it's
he'd have to, like,
Chad
that's the thing.
McChesney.
He just have to collapse.
Or the pole monkey.
Like, that's it.
Yeah.
An old Sasquatch just dies.
Yeah.
Anyway, number 5, Stanford and Cal. Who are you in the modern era of college football? What do you want?
No, yeah, it's who are you, but who do you want to be?
Yeah, who do you want to be? And Stanford is a school that athletically has put a lot of resources into a lot of things for a long time. I mean, they've always won the Learfield Directors Cup, whatever, the Sears Cup, whatever it's been. They've won that for a long time, many times. But when it comes to football and being a media presence in football, which becomes an important thing, who do you want to be and who can you be? Cal, same thing, smaller endowment, obviously. I mean, nobody has what Stanford's got in the kitty educationally, but who are you? Like, what is your identity as a modern athletic program and a modern college football program?
If they voted on campus of these two schools, and I don't know the answer, and I'm not trying to be flippant, but if they took a vote on these two campuses, if either one of the football programs was to no longer be a part of a Power 5, and I may be wrong for asking this, what would the vote be on who cares or not?
Yeah, that's what...
I may be completely wrong on that, but you get that impression.
But it's fair to ask the question based on...
I mean, John Elway.
When you look at the stadium, which is supposed to be full of students, it's not right now. So who is that? Just because they've not been winning, or is that because the student body is kids who are not into it as much, which is fine. Look, Stanford, I'm not even going to get into Cal. Stanford has geniuses from around the world that are coming to that campus. So if you're from, Norway and you decide to go to Stanford, you either are going to pick up football or you're not, and there's a good chance that maybe you don't. So it's just one of those things. They're in such a unique position when it comes to this. Number 4, Oregon and Washington. Is it worth it to even ask about the Big 12 if they just have to wait on the Big 10? Because I think it was Pat Crakes or Jim Williams who mentioned this. Pat Crakes who mentioned this. Look, the Big 12 would love to have Oregon and Washington just as brands, but is it worth the Big 12's time to get in that business if you know they're just going to wait to jump out?
Mentioned that too.
Yeah. So that's such a weird dynamic. And so do you have to take your medicine for a little bit in the Pac-12, hope they expand with some teams that help you out a little bit in the regard, take the all streaming deal and ride it out? That just seems kind of rough for two huge brands that are going to contend the next few years for college football playoff spots. So that's a weird thing. Everybody's in a weird spot, really weird spot when it comes to it. Number 3, Arizona State. Does this hurt your SoCal student base? It's not really that much of a problem for USC and UCLA because they're in Southern California. But Arizona State, I think, their plan was to be the SoCal school of the Pac-12 now that there was no SoCal school because they've got 20,000 plus students that are from Southern California. Well, if they're not going to be playing teams, does it hurt you? I don't think it does. I think the draw of Arizona State is Arizona State, and most of them, won't be bothered by who they're playing in sports, but you do have to consider it.
Yeah, I mean, that drives me crazy because my dad went there to get his master's degree. I lived there when I was very young. And, they got some tradition, Charlie Taylor, among others, Jake Plummer. And it drives me crazy that they can be more than they are. To me, they're a sleeping giant.
Well, if I did a top 5 of who does less with more, I mean, obviously the top 4 would be Texas A&M, but they just have for a long time. And I've suffered that in my family a little bit. But Arizona State, I think, is not hitting their full potential.
Oh,
and
there's an agreement or disagreement about the campus, and man, it's a beautiful campus in every way.
I ran into Phil Snow the other day at the grocery store, and he was obviously coach there. And I asked him real quick. I said, "Coach, do you think Arizona State is missing on their potential?" He said, "Every day." He said, it's just like he's like they could be a lot, because when he was there, they beat Nebraska.
No, they'd shut out Nebraska after they'd won 2 national titles.
Yeah, so they can do things at Arizona State. Number 2, Utah. Can they coexist with BYU? They were in a conference together before.
Sure, they can.
I think there's
Auburn and Alabama can coexist.
I just think there's some bad blood that's beyond. We don't like you in sports.
Yeah. No,
because it's administrative stuff. There's one school that's a state school, one school that's a religious school.
Yeah.
There's a dividing line there. They just didn't like dealing with each other. I think they can. It's right now they have to swallow that pill that they would have to. That's the thing. And you heard Scott Mitchell early in the show. If you guys were not around for that interview, go back. And he said, it's a weird thing where there's just this tension where there's enough people who would say, I really just don't want to be in the conference with BYU. And that might slow them up. And number 1, if you're Oregon State and Wazzu, what options do you have? Yeah. You have to be the champions of keeping it together. And this is very similar to the position that Iowa State, Kansas State, and Baylor were put in when the Big 12 was breaking up the first time.
Multiple times.
But the A&M, Nebraska, Colorado, Missouri couple of years, when A&M and Colorado left, Iowa State, and I don't know if Kansas was in this a little bit, but it was Iowa State, Baylor, and Kansas State were really in tough spots because they were just not as attractive to everyone else, right? And at least on the surface. And they were trying to protect their interests, which is why it was we're going to sue A&M. And then the courts are like, you can't sue A&M. But it slowed them up enough to where
it absolutely delayed it and gave them a chance. And
it gave them about 2 weeks.
Worked.
They needed 2 weeks. That's all they needed.
No matter how many people got pissed off at Ken Starr, it worked.
They needed 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's all they needed was 2 weeks to make sure they could get everything together, and they did it. I don't know if Oregon State and Washington State have those 2 weeks. That's going to be a weird thing for them.
I
feel for them, especially given what they're committing to football right now.
Yep.
That they're really behind it.
Yep.
That it's really unfortunate that you're at the mercy of all these other people.
Yeah, it sucks for them.
Yeah.
It really, really does.